close your eyes for a moment. Not to sleep, not yet, but just to let the room around you soften a little. Let the edges blur. Let the day's noise settle like dust after a long afternoon. And if you're already lying down, good. That's even better. Because tonight we're going to step into a world that is very old, very wet, and very quiet. A world where the ground itself seemed to breathe, where the sky had a rhythm all its own, and where the people who lived there learned to move with that rhythm the way a river learns to flow around a stone. We're going to talk about how ancient Chinese peasants survived monsoon rains and muddy fields. Now, you might think that life in a muddy field during a monsoon would be miserable, and in many ways it was. But misery, like rain, is only a part of the story, because the people who lived in that muddy world were not just surviving, they were thriving, they were building, they were planting seeds not only in the earth, but in the future. And they did it all with a patience that is hard to imagine today, a patience that had to be learned over generations, passed down like a slow, heavy song sung under a gray sky. Let's start with the sound of rain. Not the rain you hear on a roof, but the rain that falls for weeks at a time. The kind of rain that doesn't come in waves or storms, but settles over the land like a blanket that never dries. In ancient China, in the regions around the Yellow River and the Yangtze River, the monsoon season could last from late spring all the way into early autumn. That's months of dampness, months when the sun was a rumor, when the air felt thick enough to drink, and when the ground underfoot turned from hard, packed earth into a kind of slow, deep mud that seemed to have a life of its own. Mud that swallowed footprints, mud that clung to everything, mud that could pull a sandal right off your foot and leave you standing barefoot in the cool sludge, wondering if you would ever feel dry again. But for the peasants, the farmers who worked those fields, the mud was not an enemy. It was more like a difficult relative, one you had to live with, one you had to understand, one you had to learn to coax into cooperation. Because without that monsoon rain, there would be no water for the rice paddies. Without that mud, the rice would not grow. And without rice, there would be no life. So the mud was not just mud. It was the substance of survival itself. And the peasants learned to treat it with a kind of respect, the way a carpenter respects a difficult piece of wood, or a sailor respects a rough sea. Now, let's picture a small village. It's not a grand place. There might be a dozen houses, maybe a few more, clustered together on a piece of slightly higher ground. The roofs are thatched with rice straw, and the walls are made of packed earth, the same earth that surrounds them. When the rains come, those walls soak up moisture and grow cool to the touch. Inside, the air is damp, and everything smells of wet clay and cooking smoke. The family lives close together. Children sleep in the same room as their parents and grandparents. There's a small hearth for cooking, and a few clay pots for storing grain. There are no windows, not in the way we think of them. Just small openings to let in a little light, covered with woven mats when the wind blows too hard. And outside, the world is a sheet of water. The fields are flooded on purpose, turned into shallow lakes that reflect the gray sky. The rice seedlings stand in neat rows, their green blades rising above the water like tiny flags. It is a beautiful sight in its own way, but it is also a sight that demands constant care, because the water level must be just right. Too much, and the seedlings drown. Too little, and they wither. So the peasants become experts in water. They build small channels and dikes to guide the flow. They use wooden or bamboo scoops to move water from one field to another. They learn to read the sky, to know when the rain will come and when it will pause. It is a science, but a science without instruments. A science of the body, of the hands, of the mud between the toes. Imagine a farmer named Lee. He is not old, but his hands are already rough and calloused. He has been working these fields since he was a boy, following his father, who followed his father before him. He knows the land the way you know the lines on your own palm. He knows where the ground is soft, where it is firm, where the water pools after a rain, and where it drains away. He can tell by the feel of the mud under his feet whether the season will be good or bad. And on a morning during monsoon, Lee gets up before dawn. The rain has been falling all night, a steady, drumming sound on the thatch. He pulls on a simple coat made of straw, a kind of raincoat that the Chinese call a soi. It is humble, heavy when wet, but it keeps the worst of the rain off his body. He steps outside, and his feet sink into the mud. It comes up over his ankles. It is cold and soft, but he does not mind. He has long since stopped minding. He walks to the field, and the water is high. He stoops to check the channels, clearing away leaves and debris that might clog the flow. He uses a simple tool, a kind of wooden hoe, to shape the edges of the dikes. The work is slow. The rain falls on his hat, drips off the brim, runs down his back. He is wet everywhere, but he is warm from the effort. The mud sucks at his feet, but he moves with a rhythm that is almost like a dance. He knows that every movement matters, that every hour spent in the rain is an hour given to the rice, and the rice will give back. But it is not just the fields that need attention. The village itself must be protected. During heavy rains, the floods can rise and threaten the houses. So the villagers work together, building small embankments around the village, digging drainage ditches to carry the water away. It is a communal effort. Everyone helps. The old men who can no longer work the fields sit on covered porches and weave baskets or mend tools. The women carry water and prepare food. The children, too, learn early. They learn to carry small bundles of straw, to help guide the water, to watch the sky and report what they see. There is no sharp division between work and life. The monsoon is a season, and the season demands everything. And yet, for all the wetness and the mud, there is a quiet beauty in it. The sound of rain on the thatch, the smell of wet earth, the sight of the rice paddies turned into mirrors for the clouds. The peasants did not just endure the monsoon. They made a life within it. They found ways to enjoy the coolness, the respite from the summer heat. They would sit in their doorways, watching the rain, talking quietly, telling stories. They would cook simple meals of rice and vegetables, flavored with a little salt or a bit of fermented bean paste. would mend their tools, weave their baskets, and let the rhythm of the rain become the rhythm of their days. And when the monsoon finally relented, when the sky began to clear and the sun broke through, the peasants would step out into a world transformed. The fields would be lush and green. The mud would begin to dry, leaving behind a smooth, cracked surface that felt almost like ceramic. The paths would firm up, and the village would emerge from its wet cocoon. But even then, the memory of the monsoon lingered. It was in the water that still stood in the paddies, in the dampness of the air, in the way the ground held onto the moisture like a secret. And the peasants knew that the monsoon would come again, next year, and the year after that. They were part of a cycle older than any empire, older than any dynasty. They were part of the rhythm of the land. Now, the peasants had many strategies for dealing with the mud and the rain. Some of them are surprisingly clever, and some of them are just plain common sense. For instance, they learned to plant their rice in rows that followed the natural contours of the land, so that water would flow evenly without washing away the soil. They built terraces on hillsides, carving the slopes into steps that held the water and kept it from rushing downhill. The terraces of southern China are famous now, those green staircases that climb into the mist, but they were not built for beauty. They were built for survival. Each terrace was a tiny piece of conquered ground, a patch of mud that had been coaxed into producing food. They also learned to rotate their crops, planting rice during the wet season, and then growing other grains or vegetables when the fields dried out. They used animal manure and plant matter to enrich the soil, knowing that the heavy rains would leach nutrients away. They did not have chemical fertilizers, but they had patience and observation. They watched how the land responded, adjusted, tried again. And over centuries, they built a system of agriculture that sustained one of the largest civilizations on Earth. But let's not get too abstract. Let's stay in the mud for a while longer. Let's think about the actual experience of walking through a flooded rice paddy. The water is warm, maybe a little cooler than the air. It comes up to your shins. The mud at the bottom is soft, and each step requires a little effort to pull your foot free. You can feel the rice plants brushing against your legs, their leaves smooth and slightly rough at the edges. There is a smell of wet earth and green things, a smell that is almost sweet. There is the sound of water moving, of birds calling in the distance, of the occasional insect. It is a peaceful place, even though it is hard work. And the peasants did this every day, for weeks at a time. They did it with their families, with their neighbors, with their children learning alongside them. They did it without complaint, because complaint was useless. The rain did not care. The mud did not care. But the people cared for each other. They shared the work, shared the food, shared the stories that made the long days pass. So, when you think about ancient Chinese peasants surviving monsoon rains, do not imagine them as miserable figures bent under a cruel sky. Imagine them as people who knew the land intimately, who understood that the rain was both a trial and a gift. Imagine them as people who had learned to live with mud, to find in it not just difficulty, but a kind of grace. and imagine yourself, for just a moment, standing beside them. Feel the rain on your face, feel the mud under your feet, and breathe. The world is wet and slow and full of life, and we are just beginning to explore it. And so, let us drift a little deeper into that world, into the rhythm of the muddy fields and the steady rain. There is a tool that every peasant knows well, a tool that seems simple, but is, in truth, a marvel of adaptation. It is called a nongju, the plow, but not the iron plow of later dynasties. No, this is a wooden plow, or sometimes a plow tipped with a piece of stone or bronze. It is pulled by a water buffalo, that great, lumbering animal with its patient eyes and its broad, wet nose. The water buffalo is the peasant's partner, its hooves sinking into the mud just as the peasant's feet do. Together, they turn the soil before the planting, churning the mud until it is soft and ready to receive the rice seedlings. The buffalo moves slowly, its breath coming in deep, rhythmic puffs. The peasant walks behind, guiding the plow, his hands on the wooden handles, feeling the vibration of the blade cutting through the earth. The mud splashes up, warm and dark, speckling his straw coat, his legs, his face. But he does not wipe it off. He lets it dry, and it becomes a part of him, like the calluses on his hands. The water buffalo is not just a worker. It is a companion. It lives in a shed near the house, and the children bring it fresh grass and water. They learn to wash it in the river, scrubbing its thick hide with their hands, feeling the coarse hair and the warmth underneath. The buffalo has a low, rumbling voice, a sound that seems to come from deep inside the earth. When it makes that sound, the peasants know it is content. And when it is content, the work goes well. There's a saying among the villagers, if the buffalo is happy, the rice will grow. And they believe it because they have seen it come true year after year. Now, let us talk about the rice itself. The rice is not just food. It is a presence, a living thing that requires constant attention. The peasants plant the seedlings in small bunches, pressing them into the mud with their fingers. They do this by hand, row after row, bending over the water until their backs ache. But they do not rush. They have learned that rushing only leads to mistakes. A seedling planted too shallow may be washed away by the next rain. A seedling planted too deep may not get enough air. So they move with a gentle precision, their fingers finding the right depth, their thumbs pressing the mud around the roots. It is a kind of meditation, this planting. The rain falls, the water swirls, and the peasants stand in the flooded field, their hands in the mud, their eyes on the green tips of the seedlings. And as they work, they talk. They tell stories. They sing. The songs are old, older than anyone can remember. They are about the rain, the sun, the harvest, the ancestors who planted these same fields 1,000 years ago. And when the rice begins to grow, the peasants must protect it from pests. The birds are the worst. They come in flocks, swooping down to peck at the tender grains. So the peasants build scarecrows, but not the simple, cross-shaped figures you might imagine. These scarecrows are made from old clothes, stuffed with straw, with hats and faces painted on gourds. They stand in the fields like silent guardians, their sleeves flapping in the wind. But the birds are clever. They learn quickly that the scarecrows do not move, so the peasants add noise. They hang bamboo clappers on strings so that when the wind blows, the clappers knock together and make a sound like rain on wood. They also build little platforms where children sit and shout, waving their arms, chasing away the birds with their laughter and their cries. It is a game for the children, but it is also serious. The rice is the family's life, and every grain counts. The monsoon rains also bring the leeches. They are small, dark, and bloodthirsty. They hide in the mud and attach themselves to the peasants' legs, feeding on their blood. The peasants do not panic. They have learned to remove them gently, using a pinch of salt or a hot ember from the fire. They do not curse the leeches. They simply accept them as part of the wet world. They pull them off and carry on. There is a story among the peasants about a man who was so patient that he let a leech drink its fill, because he said it was just doing what it was born to do. The story is told with a smile, but there is truth in it. The peasants understand that they are not the only creatures in the fields. They share the mud with insects, with birds, with snakes, with all the tiny beings that come alive during the monsoon. And the snakes, yes, there are snakes. They come out of the flooded burrows, swimming through the water, seeking higher ground. The peasants see them, but they do not kill them. They believe that snakes are the guardians of the rice, that they eat the rats and the mice that would devour the grain. So they let them pass. They watch the snakes glide through the water, their heads held above the surface like small sticks, and they give them a wide berth, but they do not fear them. Everything has its place in the field. As the monsoon continues, the village becomes islands of thatch and bamboo in a sea of water. The paths are so muddy that walking becomes a chore. The peasants learn to walk with their feet turned outward, a kind of waddle that helps them keep their balance. They also make sandals from straw, tied with strips of cloth. These sandals are cheap and easy to replace. When they become too muddy, the peasants simply rinse them in a puddle and put them back on. The mud is everywhere. It gets under their fingernails, in their hair, into the cracks of their skin. They grow accustomed to it. They accept that they will never be fully clean during the monsoon months, and so they stop trying. They become people of the mud, and the mud becomes a kind of second skin. But the mud is not just dirt. It is alive. It contains tiny organisms, microorganisms, that break down the organic matter and release nutrients into the water. The peasants know this, even if they do not have the words for it. They know that the mud smells rich and earthy, and that it gives life to the rice. They also know that the mud can be used for building. They mix it with straw and stamp it into bricks. They dry these bricks in the sun, then use them to build walls, ovens, even the floors of their houses. The mud houses are cool in the summer and warm in the winter. They breathe. They smell of earth and rain and smoke. And when the monsoon rains come, the mud houses absorb the moisture and release it slowly, like a jar that holds the scent of the season. The peasants also use the mud for medicine. They make a poultice from the clay, mixed with herbs, to soothe sore muscles and aching joints. They rub it on their arms after a long day in the fields, and it cools the skin and draws out the heat. They also use it to treat wounds, packing it into cuts to stop the bleeding and prevent infection. It is not sterile, but it works. It is the wisdom of the land, passed down from mother to daughter, father to son. And when the rain pauses, as it sometimes does, the peasants take advantage of the break. They go to the river to wash their clothes and their bodies. They scrub the mud off their feet and legs, watching the brown water swirl away. They laugh and splash, the children shrieking with joy. They also fish. The rivers are swollen and the fish are plentiful. They use nets made from hemp or simple traps woven from bamboo. They catch carp and catfish, eels and shrimp. They take them home and cook them over a fire, adding ginger and garlic, soy sauce, and rice wine. The smell of fish frying fills the village, mixing with the damp air, and for a moment, the wetness is forgotten. The family sits together on the floor, eating from communal bowls, the steam rising into the thatch above. The rain begins again, a soft patter on the roof, and they listen to it as they eat. It is a good sound, the sound of protection. The roof is strong, the walls are thick, and the rice is growing. So when you think of the ancient Chinese peasants, do not think of them as victims of the weather. Think of them as participants in a vast, slow dance. They move with the rain, not against it. They shape the mud, and the mud shapes them. They are patient. They are wise. They have learned that the monsoon is not an enemy. It is a season like any other, with its own gifts and its own demands. And they accept it fully, with all of its hardships and all of its beauty. Let us take a moment to picture a village on a quiet afternoon during the monsoon. The rain has been falling for hours, a steady, gentle drumming. The air is cool and thick. The thatched roofs are dark with moisture, dripping from the eaves in long, clear strands. The water pools in the courtyard, reflecting the gray sky. The chickens have taken shelter under the house, huddled together, their feathers ruffled. The dog lies on the porch, its nose resting on its paws, watching the rain with half-closed eyes. Inside, the grandmother sits by the fire, spinning thread from flax. The fire crackles, the smoke rises, and the smell of burning wood mixes with the scent of wet earth. The children are quiet, listening to a story. The grandfather tells them about a time when the rain did not stop for 40 days, and the water rose higher than anyone had ever seen. But the villagers worked together, he says. They built a great dike of earth and stone, and they saved the fields. And after the waters receded, the rice grew taller and more golden than ever before. It was a gift from the river god, he says, who tested them and found them worthy. The children's eyes grow wide. They believe the story because they have seen the dike themselves, the old wall of earth that stands at the edge of the village, covered in grass and moss. They have touched its damp surface. They know that it was built by hands like theirs, hands that belonged to their great-grandparents, their great-great-grandparents. And they feel a kind of pride, a quiet sense of connection. They are part of this story. They will build the dikes of the future when their time comes. The grandmother finishes her thread and begins to weave. She uses a simple loom made of wood and bamboo that clacks softly as she works. The sound is rhythmic, hypnotic. The children watch her fingers, swift and sure, as they pass the shuttle back and forth. They learn by watching, as their parents learned before them. Nothing is written down. Everything is passed through the hands, through the eyes, through the stories. And outside, the rain continues. It falls on the rice paddies, on the water buffalo standing patiently in the shed, on the scarecrows swaying in the wind. It falls on the muddy paths, on the bamboo groves, on the hills in the distance. It is a sound that never stops, a soft, white noise that wraps around the village like a blanket. It is the sound of the monsoon, the sound of survival, the sound of life itself. And so we return to Lee, our farmer, on that morning long ago. He has finished his work for now. He straightens his back, wipes the rain from his face, and looks out over his field. The water is at the right depth. The seedlings are standing straight. The dikes are holding. He nods to himself, satisfied. He turns and walks back to the village, his feet squelching in the mud. He is wet, he is tired, but he is content. He knows that when he returns home, there will be a bowl of rice porridge waiting for him and a fire to warm his hands. He knows that his wife will ask him how the field looks, and he will tell her it is good. He knows that his children will run to greet him, and he will lift them up, muddy hands and all, and they will laugh. This is the life of the ancient Chinese peasant. It is hard. It is wet. It is filled with mud and rain and endless, patient work. But it is also filled with love, with community, with the deep satisfaction of watching something grow from the soil. And in that way, it is a life that is not so different from our own, despite the centuries that separate us. Let us sit with Lee for a moment, inside his home. The fire crackles. The steam rises from the porridge. The rain drums on the roof. He is warm. He is safe. He is part of a story that has no end, a story of mud and rain and rice, and the people who live with them. And as you close your eyes, imagine the sound of that rain. Imagine the smell of the wet earth. Imagine the feel of the mud between your toes, and let yourself drift, slow and gentle, into the arms of the monsoon. The night is long, the rain is steady, and the world is full of quiet, ancient magic. We are only halfway through this story, but the story does not rush. It takes its time, like the water that seeps through the soil, like the roots that reach deep into the mud. There is no need to hurry. The rain will fall until it is ready to stop. The rice will grow until it is ready to be harvested. And we will watch, and we will listen, and we will learn. So let the rain be your lullaby. Let the mud be your bed. And let the ancient peasants, those silent, weathered souls, keep watch over the fields as they have done for thousands of years. Good night for now. The monsoon is still falling, and there is so much more to tell. The hours pass, and the rain changes its rhythm. It slows to a drizzle, then quickens again, then settles into a steady, patient fall. Lee wakes in the dark before dawn, as he always does. The fire has died to embers, glowing red in the hearth. He stirs them carefully, adding a few sticks of bamboo, watching the flames catch and spread. The light fills the room with a soft orange glow, casting long shadows against the mud walls. His wife stirs beside him, then rises to prepare the morning meal. She moves quietly, her feet padding softly on the packed earth floor. She takes down a clay pot and fills it with water from the jar by the door. The water is cool and clear, collected from the roof during the rain. She adds a handful of rice, a pinch of salt, and sets it over the fire. Soon the pot begins to simmer, and the smell of cooking rice fills the room. Lee puts on his straw coat and hat. He steps outside into the gray morning. The rain is light now, barely more than a mist. The air is cool and damp, and the ground is soft beneath his feet. He walks to the edge of the village, where the fields begin. The water in the paddies is calm, reflecting the pale sky. He checks the dikes again, walking along the narrow ridges, looking for cracks or leaks. He finds a small one, where a crab has burrowed into the earth. He kneels down, scoops up a handful of mud, and packs it into the hole, smoothing it over with his palm. The mud is cool and sticky, and it holds its shape. He pats it gently, then stands and continues his inspection. Nearby, a neighbor is doing the same. They nod to each other, but do not speak. There is no need. The language of the fields is understood without words. They both know that the morning is the best time to check the dikes before the day's work begins. They both know that the rain will return, heavier, later in the afternoon. They both know that the work is never finished, only paused. Lee finishes his rounds and returns home. His wife has laid out the bowls on the low table. The rice porridge is thick and steaming. She has added a few slices of pickled radish and a piece of salted fish. The children are awake now, sitting cross-legged on the floor, rubbing their eyes. They eat in silence, the only sound the soft clink of chopsticks against the bowls. Afterwards, Lee takes his tools and heads back to the fields. The rain begins again as he reaches the paddy, a gentle patter that grows into a steady drumming. He does not hurry. He wades into the water, feeling the mud suck at his feet. He begins to transplant the seedlings, one by one, pushing them into the soft earth with his fingers. His hands are coated in mud. His back aches, but he continues, row after row, as the rain falls on his hat and his coat and the water around him. The morning passes slowly. The rain falls and falls. The sky is a blanket of gray, and the fields stretch out like a mirror, broken only by the green tips of the rice. Lee's movements are slow and deliberate. He does not rush. He cannot rush. The work must be done carefully, or the seedlings will not take root. He breathes in the damp air, listens to the rain, and lets his mind drift. He thinks of nothing in particular. He thinks of the rice, of his family, of the soil beneath his feet. He thinks of his father, who taught him this work, and his grandfather, who taught his father. He thinks of the hundreds of generations who have done this same thing in the same fields, under the same rain. And he feels a sense of calm, a deep and quiet peace. At midday, his daughter brings him a jar of water. She walks carefully along the dike, holding the jar against her chest. She is old enough to know not to spill. She is young enough to still find joy in the puddles. Lee takes the jar, drinks deeply, and hands it back to her. She smiles at him, her hair plastered to her face by the rain. Then she turns and runs back to the village, splashing through the puddles, and Lee watches her go, his chest warm with a love so simple and so strong that it takes his breath away. The afternoon rain is heavier. The sky darkens, and the drumming on his hat grows louder. Lee works on, his hands moving through the mud, his body bent against the weather. He is soaked through now. The straw coat can only do so much. The water seeps in at the collar, at the sleeves, at the hem. He wishes he had another layer, but he does not. He simply accepts it. He is wet, and he will remain wet until he goes home. He stops to rest for a moment, straightening his back and stretching his arms. He looks out across the field. The water is rising. It is up to his shins now, deeper in some spots. He checks the dikes again. They are holding. He sees a neighbor in the distance, doing the same. They wave to each other, a small gesture of solidarity, and then return to their work. By late afternoon, Lee has finished transplanting the section of the field he set out for today. He is tired, aching, soaked to the bone. He climbs out of the paddy and walks home. The steps are heavy, each one a small effort. The mud clings to his feet, thick and stubborn. He pauses at the edge of the village to scrape it off with a stick, but it is a losing battle. He gives up and continues, leaving muddy footprints on the path. His wife is waiting for him at the door. She hands him a piece of cloth to dry his hands and face. She has changed the fire, and fresh coals are burning. Lee sits down by the hearth, holding his hands out to the flames. The warmth seeps into his skin, slow and delicious. He sighs a deep sigh, the breath of a day's work well done. The children come and sit beside him. They ask him about the field, and he tells them that the rice is growing well, that the dikes are strong, that the rain is a blessing. They listen, wide-eyed, as if he is telling them a fairy tale. And in a way, he is. He is telling them the story of their own lives, the story of the land that sustains them. His wife brings him a bowl of hot tea, made from ginger and brown sugar, and a few slices of dried tangerine peel. He wraps his hands around the bowl, feeling the heat through the clay. He sips it slowly, letting it warm him from the inside. The rain drums on the roof. The fire crackles. The family is together. It is enough. Later, after the evening meal, Lee sits by the fire with his youngest son, a boy of 6 or 7. He is teaching him how to weave a bamboo basket. The boy's hands are small, unsure, but eager. Lee guides them gently, showing him how to bend the strips, how to overlap them, how to make the basket strong. It is a skill that takes years to master, but the boy is patient. He wants to learn. He wants to be like his father. Lee thinks about the future. He wonders if his son will stay in the village, if he will carry on the work of the fields. He does not know. The world is changing, even here, even in this remote corner of the empire. There are traders who come through, bringing news of cities far away, of new tools and new ways of doing things. But Lee does not worry about it. He cannot. The rain is falling, the rice is growing, and the work is waiting. That is all he can do. He finishes the basket with his son, showing him how to tuck the final strip to make a rim. The boy holds it up, beaming with pride. It is lopsided and clumsy, but it is his. Lee ruffles his hair and tells him It is a fine basket, the finest he has ever seen. The boy giggles and carries it to his mother to show her. And so the evening passes, quiet and full of small joys. The rain continues outside, but inside the mud house there is warmth, there is light, there is love. It is a scene that has played out 1,000,000 times in 1,000,000 villages across 1,000 years. It is the heart of the story, the true survival of the monsoon. Not in the grand engineering, not in the clever irrigation, but in the simple, ordinary moments of family and home. The rain falls through the night. It falls on the roof, on the fields, on the hills. It falls on the graves of ancestors where their bones rest in the damp earth. It falls on the temples and the shrines where incense burns beneath the eaves. It falls on the river, which rises and swells, carrying the water away to the sea. It is a sound that never stops, a sound that is older than memory, older than the mountains themselves. And Lee sleeps, his body curled on the mat beside the fire. His hands rest on his chest, still stained with mud. His breath is slow and deep. He dreams of the fields, of the green shoots pushing through the water, of the sun breaking through the clouds. He dreams of his children grown, of his grandchildren playing in the paddies. He dreams of the cycle, the endless turning of the seasons, the rain and the sun and the harvest. He is a small man in a small village in a vast country. But he is not insignificant. He is part of something enormous, something ancient and ongoing. He is a thread in the tapestry of the monsoon, a note in the song of the rain. And he sleeps, and he is held by the earth, by the water, by the sky. Now, let us travel to another village, a few valleys over. The rain is the same, but the land is different. Here, the fields are terraced, carved into the hillsides like steps. The water flows from one terrace to the next, a series of small waterfalls that murmur in the quiet. The terraces were built hundreds of years ago by the ancestors of the people who live here now. They cut into the hillside with hand tools, moving earth and stone, shaping the land to hold the water. It took generations to finish. It took patience and faith and backbreaking labor. But it was done, and it still holds. In this village, the homes are built on stilts, raised above the damp ground. The space beneath is used for storing firewood, for keeping the chickens, for sheltering the water buffalo. The floors are made of split bamboo, which lets the air circulate and keeps the house cool. The walls are woven from reeds, plastered with mud and dung. The roof is thatched, thick and well tended. The chimney is a simple hole in the center, with a hood made of clay. The smoke rises through it, and the rain falls into it, but the family does not mind. The smoke keeps the insects away. The rain cools the fire. In this village, the people are known for their skill with bamboo. They make everything from it: baskets, traps, fences, tools, even hats. The bamboo grows thick in the groves along the river, and they harvest it carefully, cutting only the mature stalks, leaving the young ones to grow. They split it into strips, which bend and flex without breaking. They boil it to soften the fibers, then bend it into shapes that hold. It is a material that is strong, light, and renewable. It is the peasant's best friend after the water buffalo and the rain. One of the craftsmen in this village is an old man named Chen. He is known for his fish traps, which are woven so tightly that no fish can escape, but with gaps that allow the young ones to pass through. He has been making them since he was a boy, learning from his father, who learned from his father. Chen's hands are gnarled and calloused, but they are still nimble. He can weave a basket in an afternoon, his fingers moving with a speed that seems almost magical. He sits on the porch of his home, just under the eaves, watching the rain as he works. The water drips from the roof, forming a curtain that shimmers in the gray light. It is hypnotic, the way it falls, the way it pools, the way it reflects the world around it. Chen does not feel lonely as he works. He feels connected to the rain, to the bamboo, to the land. He finishes the trap and holds it up. It is a thing of beauty, symmetrical and strong. He will sell it at the market in the next town or trade it for salt and oil. But that is for later. For now, he sets it aside and looks out at the rain. The terraces below his home are full, shimmering in the distance. The rice is a soft green, laid over the hills like a carpet. It is a good year. The rain is steady, not too heavy, not too light. The harvest will be plentiful. He thinks of his wife, who died 3 winters ago. He feels her absence like a dull ache, but he does not dwell on it. He is too old for dwelling. He prefers to remember the good moments, the mornings they spent together in the field, the evenings they sat by the fire, the way she used to laugh when he told a silly joke. She is still with him, in a way. In the bamboo he weaves, in the food he eats, in the rain that falls. He does not need to talk to her. He simply knows she is there. Chen's daughter brings him a cup of rice wine, warm and sweet. He thanks her and drinks it slowly. The wine warms his belly and loosens his joints. He feels a kind of contentment, a quiet acceptance of the life he has lived. He has worked hard. He has loved deeply. He is ready for whatever comes next. The rain falls through the afternoon, through the evening, through the night. It falls on Chen's village, on Li's village, on every village in the region. It falls on the rivers and the lakes and the forests. It falls on the mountains and the valleys and the plains. It is a great, gentle blanket that covers the world, softening the edges, muffling the sounds, easing the minds of all who hear it. And somewhere, in a mud house with a thatched roof, a child lies awake, listening to the rain. She is young, perhaps 5 or 6. She does not understand the rain, not really. She only knows its sound, its rhythm, its constant presence. She knows that when the rain is heavy, her father stays home, and they sit together by the fire. She knows that when the rain is light, she can play outside, splashing in the puddles. She does not know that the rain is the source of her food, the water that fills the rice paddies, the lifeline of her world. She only feels it, a presence that is both outside and inside, a sound that is the backdrop of her childhood. She lies on her mat, listening. Her mother is beside her, already sleeping. The fire has died down, and the room is dark. The rain is a soft, steady percussion on the roof. It is like a heartbeat, the breathing of the earth. The girl closes her eyes, and she imagines that she is floating on a wide, quiet river, the rain falling around her, the water carrying her gently toward an unseen shore. It is a dream without words, a dream of water and peace. And she drifts, and she sleeps, and the rain continues. This is the story of the monsoon. It is not a story of heroes or kings. It is not a story of great battles or grand temples. It is a story of ordinary people doing ordinary things under extraordinary weather. It is a story of mud and rain and rice, of patience and endurance and love. It is a story that is told not in words, but in actions, in the way a farmer bends to plant a seedling, in the way a mother stirs a pot of porridge, in the way a child sleeps through the storm. So let us stay here, in this quiet moment. Let us listen to the rain. Let us feel the damp air on our skin, the soft earth beneath our feet. Let us remember that we are part of the same ancient story, that the rain that falls today is the same rain that fell on the fields of China thousands of years ago. It connects us across time and space to all the farmers and fishermen and weavers and mothers who have lived before us. It is a thread that runs through the human story, drawing us together, reminding us that we are not alone. And so the night deepens, the rain continues, and the story holds its breath, waiting for the dawn. The fields are safe, the water is deep, the rice is dreaming, and the peasants, those quiet souls of mud and rain, rest in the arms of the monsoon, knowing that tomorrow will come, and with it more work, more rain, more life. And that life, that quiet, enduring life, continues in every corner of the monsoon lands. Let us stay with the child for just a moment longer, though she is already deep in dream. Her breathing is soft and regular, matching the rhythm of the rain. In her sleep, she turns onto her side, and her hand reaches out as if to touch something. But there is nothing there, only the warmth of the mat and the faint sound of her mother's breathing. She settles again, and the rain continues its lullaby. But now, let us move to the edge of the village, where the fields meet the forest. Here, the land is not terraced, but flat and low, and the water lies on top of it like a sheet of glass. The rice is planted in straight rows, and from a distance, the field looks like a great green mirror, reflecting the clouds and the sky. The surface is still, except for the ripples made by the falling rain. It is a place of stillness and reflection, where time seems to slow and the world becomes a painting. In this field, a man is working. His name is very.A, and he is not young. He is perhaps 50, with a face that is weathered and kind. He wears a conical hat made of bamboo and a coat woven from palm leaves. The rain slides off him like water off a duck's back. He is planting seedlings, one by one, bending at the waist and pushing the tender green shoots into the mud. He works slowly, methodically, as if each seedling deserves his full attention. And perhaps it does. He has planted these fields for 30 years, and he knows that the care he gives each plant will be returned in the harvest. The mud is cold and soft around his feet. He does not mind it. It is a familiar sensation, like the touch of an old friend. He remembers burying his feet in the mud as a child, the way it squelched between his toes. He remembers learning to walk in the paddy, the way his father held his hand and guided him through the water. The mud is memory. It is home. Lee-Wei pauses and straightens his back. He looks out across the field. The rain has eased slightly, and the clouds are beginning to thin. He can see the mountains in the distance, their peaks hidden in mist. He thinks of his son, who has gone to the city to find work. He hopes the boy is safe, that he is eating well, that he remembers how to plant rice. He misses him, but he does not say so. He is a man of few words. He expresses his love through his hands, through the work he does, through the fields he tends. He resumes planting. The rhythm of his work is like a meditation. Bend, push, straighten. Bend, push, straighten. The rain falls, the mud accepts, the rice takes root. It is a cycle as old as human memory. And Lee-Wei is part of it, a small but essential part, a link in the chain that stretches back to his ancestors and forward to his grandchildren. Behind him, a water buffalo stands in the field, chewing slowly. Its great, dark body is coated in mud, and its eyes are half closed in contentment. It has been plowing this field for days, and now it is resting. The water buffalo is the farmer's partner, his companion in the mud. They work together, breath by breath, step by step. The buffalo pulls the plow, and the farmer guides it. They share the burden of the land. They share the rain. Lee-Wei finishes the row and walks back to the edge of the field. He sits down on a small stool carved from a single piece of wood and takes a drink from a gourd. The water is cool and clean. He looks at the sky, at the shifting clouds, and he knows that more rain is coming. He can feel it in the air, in the way the wind has shifted. He will be in the field again tomorrow, and the day after, and the day after that. That is the life of a farmer. It is not a life of adventure or excitement. It is a life of patience, of repetition, of small acts of faith. But there is a kind of beauty in it, a kind of poetry. The rows of rice are like lines of verse. The rain is the punctuation. The harvest is the final stanza. And the farmer is both the poet and the reader, the one who writes and the one who waits. Let us move again to a place where the river meets the sea. Here, the land is flat and marshy, and the wind carries the smell of salt. The villages here are built on raised platforms, connected by wooden walkways. The people here are fishermen, not farmers. They do not plant rice. They plant nets. One of these fishermen is an old man named Hai. He has lived on the water his entire life, and he knows the tides as he knows the lines on his own hands. He stands on the dock, mending a net, his fingers moving with the same skill as Chen the bamboo weaver. The net is made of hemp, and it is large and heavy. He has owned it for 20 years, and he has repaired it 100 times. It is full of small holes and patches, like a quilt that has been passed down through generations. He works slowly, carefully, threading the needle in and out, tying knots that will hold. The rain is light now, a fine mist that clings to his beard and eyelashes. He does not bother with a hat. He is used to the wet. It is a part of him. Beyond the dock, the river flows into the sea, a great gray expanse that stretches to the horizon. The water is rough, with whitecaps and waves. The fishermen know not to go out when the monsoon is at its peak. The sea is too dangerous. They wait for the gaps in the weather. the days and nights when the wind drops and the rain eases. Then they launch their boats, paddling out into the gray world, casting their nets into the dark water. It is a gamble. Sometimes they catch many fish. Sometimes they catch nothing. But they go anyway, because that is what they do. It is the only life they know. Hai finishes mending the net and folds it carefully. He will not use it today. The rain is too heavy. He will wait. He is patient. He has learned that the sea rewards those who know how to wait. He turns and walks back to his home, a small house on stilts at the edge of the village. He climbs the ladder, careful with his old knees, and pushes open the door. Inside, his wife is cooking. The fire is small, just enough to warm the pot. She is making a simple fish stew with ginger and scallions. The smell fills the small space, mixing with the smoke and the damp. Hai sits down on the floor, and his wife hands him a bowl. They eat in silence, the only sound the hiss of the fire and the patter of the rain. This is the rhythm of their life. Work, eat, sleep, mend. The rain is the constant, the background, the companion. It is not an enemy. It is a partner, a force that shapes their days and nights. And now, let us think about the children of the monsoon. For them, the rain is not a source of worry or hardship. It is an adventure. They play in the puddles, splashing and laughing, their feet slapping against the mud. They make boats out of leaves and float them in the gutters. They catch frogs and release them. They are free in a way that the adults are not. They have not yet learned the weight of the rain, the responsibility it carries. They only know its joy. In a village near the mountains, a group of children is playing a game. They have found a large puddle deep enough to swim in, and they are taking turns diving into it. The water is brown and murky, but they do not care. They are covered in mud from head to toe. Their laughter rings out through the rain, a sound as pure as the water itself. One of the children, a boy of about 7, stops and looks up at the sky. He opens his mouth and lets the rain fall onto his tongue. It tastes cool and clean. He closes his eyes, and for a moment he is completely still, feeling the rain on his face, the mud on his feet, the air in his lungs. He is alive, and he knows it. It is a simple, profound awareness, one that he will carry with him for the rest of his life. He runs back to the puddle and jumps in, sending a spray of water across his friends. They shriek and laugh and splash him back. The rain falls on them all, and they are happy. Let us stay with this moment for a while. Let us remember what it felt like to be a child in the rain, the freedom, the joy, the absence of worry. The world was simple then. The rain was just rain. The mud was just mud. And the future was a distant, unimaginable thing. But the children grow. They become farmers and fishermen and weavers. They take on the burdens of adulthood. They learn to worry about the rain, to watch it, to work with it. They become the people we have been visiting tonight, the peasants who survive the monsoon by accepting it, by working with it, by living in harmony with its rhythm. And yet, even as adults, they carry a piece of that childhood joy. It is there, buried beneath the worry and the work. It surfaces on the days when the rain is gentle, when the work is light, when they sit on their porches and watch the water fall. It surfaces in the laughter of their own children, in the games they play in the puddles. It is passed down like the terraces and the nets and the bamboo traps. The monsoon is not just a season. It is a way of being, a way of seeing the world. The peasants of ancient China understood this. They did not make war on the rain. They made peace with it. They built their lives around it, their homes, their fields, their families. They knew that the rain was not just weather. It was a gift, a challenge, a teacher. It taught them patience, endurance, humility. It taught them to find joy in small things, in the warmth of a family, in the comfort of a good meal, in the beauty of a drop. As the night moves on, let us return to the village where we began, the one with the terraced fields and the old weaver. The rain is still falling, but it has softened. It is a light drizzle now, more a mist than a storm. The air is cool and clean. The stars are beginning to appear, hidden behind the thinning clouds. It will be a good day tomorrow. The rice is safe. The fields are full. The cycle continues. The old weaver, Chen, has finished his work for the night. He is lying on his mat, listening to the rain. He thinks of his grandson, who is studying in the city. He thinks of the boy's future, the life he will lead. He hopes the boy will remember the village, the bamboo, the rain. He hopes he will come back, at least for a visit, to walk in the terraces, to taste the rice, to sit by the fire, and listen to his old grandfather tell stories. But those are thoughts for another time. For now, he closes his eyes. The rain whispers on the roof. The bamboo creaks in the breeze. The village sleeps. And he sleeps too, a man of the land, a man of the rain, a man at peace. The monsoon holds them all, the old and the young, the farmers and the fishermen, the weavers and the mothers and the children. It is a great, gentle hand that cradles the land and all who live on it. It is the breath of the earth, the song of the sky, the rhythm of life itself. And as we listen to the rain, as we feel the damp air on our skin, as we imagine the terraced fields and the thatched roofs, and the slow, patient work of the people who live there, we can find a kind of peace. We can let our minds drift, let our worries dissolve, let ourselves be carried by the rhythm of the water, the same rhythm that has carried the peasants of ancient China through thousands of years of monsoon rains. They survived because they did not fight the rain. They embraced it. They learned its moods, its secrets, its gifts. They built their world around it. And in doing so, they built a world that could hold them, that could nurture them, that could carry them from one season to the next, from one generation to the next. So let us stay here in this quiet, rain-soaked night. Let us breathe slowly. Let us listen. The rain is falling. The fields are drinking. The rice is growing. And somewhere, in a village lost to time, a peasant is dreaming of the dawn. And perhaps we can follow that thread, the thread of dreaming, as it weaves through the village like the roots of the old banyan tree at the edge of the rice paddies. The peasant who dreams of the dawn is not alone. In the small house beside the stream, a young woman named May dreams of the morning meal. She is the daughter of the weaver, though she herself is a teacher of bamboo. Her hands are quick and clever, and she knows how to split a green stalk into strips so fine they feel like silk. In her dream, she is sitting on the porch, the rain falling soft and steady, and she is weaving a basket. It is a simple basket, round and deep, meant for carrying vegetables from the garden. But in the dream, the basket grows larger and larger until it is big enough to hold the whole harvest, big enough to hold the rain itself. She wakes with a start, the image still bright behind her eyes, and she laughs quietly at the absurdity of it. A basket for the rain. What a thought. She lies still for a moment, listening. The rain is falling, yes, but it is a gentle sound, a lullaby rather than a warning. She can hear her father breathing softly on the other side of the room. She can hear the faint rustle of the chickens in their coop beneath the house. She can hear the distant sound of the river, running full and fast. It is the sound of security, of water doing what water is supposed to do. She closes her eyes and lets the sound carry her back towards sleep, but her mind is already stirring with the tasks of the morning. The bamboo must be harvested before the rains swell the stalks too much. The leaves must be stripped and stacked. The baskets must be mended, the ones that hold the rice, the ones that carry the fish. It is a gentle urgency, not a panic. There is time. There is always time, as long as the rain does not turn to fury. And this is the quiet truth of the monsoon life. The work is never finished, but it is never rushed either. There's a patience that comes from living with a sky that cannot be argued with. You do not shout at the clouds. You do not curse the mud. You simply move with them, as slowly or as quickly as they allow. The peasants of ancient China understood this in their bones. They had no other choice. The monsoon was not an interruption. It was the very fabric of the year. Let us drift now to another part of the village, a little farther up the slope, where a man named Li is lying awake in his tiny house. He is a rice farmer, a man of few words and many quiet observations. He has been awake for an hour, listening to the rain on his roof. The sound has changed in the night. At first, it was a drumming, a steady beat that shook the thatch. Then it softened to patter. Now it is barely a whisper, a secret shared between the clouds and the earth. He knows what this means. The worst of the storm has passed. The water will continue to fall for days, maybe weeks, but the danger is over. The fields will be safe until the next surge. He feels a deep, wordless gratitude, not to any god or spirit, but simply to the way things are. The rain has been kind. The rice has been strong. The mud has held. He turns on his side and looks at the small altar in the corner of the room. It is bare except for a single candle and a few grains of rice. He does not light the candle now. He does not pray. He just looks at it, a small reminder of the ancestors who came before him, who faced the same rains, who worked the same mud, who learned the same patience. They survived. He will survive. And his children, if they stay, will survive too. But there is a part of him that wonders about the future. He has heard stories from travelers, merchants who pass through the village on their way to the city. They speak of new ways of farming, new seeds that can grow even in drought, new tools that make the work easier. He listens politely, but he does not believe. The old ways have served his family for generations. They are not perfect, they are not easy, but they are known. And there is comfort in the known, in the familiar rhythm of the seasons, in the feel of the mud between his fingers, in the sound of the rain on the roof. He does not need to change. He does not need to improve. He needs only to continue to keep the cycle turning, to pass the knowledge on to the next pair of hands. That is enough. That is everything. Outside, the night is growing darker, but the sky is clearing in patches. A few stars appear, then disappear behind a thin veil of cloud. The moon is hidden, but its light filters through, casting a pale glow on the wet ground. The village is still. The only sound is the drip of water from the eaves and the distant murmur of the river. It is a sound that has been heard for thousands of years, a sound that will be heard for thousands more. Let us think now of the farmers who are not quite awake, who hover in that dreamy state between sleeping and waking. They hear the rain, but they do not fully register it. It is like the beating of their own hearts, a background rhythm that reminds them they are alive. They dream of the fields, of the green shoots rising from the mud, of the sun breaking through the clouds. They dream of the harvest, of the full granaries, of the feasts to come. They dream of their children, their parents, their neighbors. They dream of the village as it was and as it will be. And in these dreams, they are not alone. The ancestors are there too, standing at the edge of the field, nodding slowly, their faces hidden in shadow. They do not speak. They do not need to. Their presence is enough. They are the ones who built the terraces, who dug the channels, who planted the first seeds. They are the ones who survived the worst storms, the longest droughts, the hungriest winters. They are the ones who passed down the knowledge, the tools, the patience. And now they watch, silent and still, as their descendants carry on the work. The young woman, May, has fallen asleep again. She dreams of nothing now, only darkness and quiet. The rain has softened to a stillness. The house is warm with the heat of sleeping bodies. She breathes slowly, deeply, her chest rising and falling. The basket from her earlier dream is forgotten. The work of the morning is forgotten. She is simply resting, letting the night hold her. The farmer, Lee, is asleep too. His breathing is rough, a slight snore that comes and goes. His wife stirs beside him, pulls the thin blanket up over her shoulder. She does not wake. She is used to his snoring. It is another sound of the night, as familiar as the rain. And so the village sleeps. The rain falls. The river flows. The mud settles. The rice grows, invisible in the dark, pushing upward through the water. It is a miracle, though no one calls it that. It is simply what happens, what has always happened, what will always happen. Let us turn our attention now to the water itself, the monsoon rain, and consider its journey. It begins as vapor, rising from the sea, from the rivers, from the wet earth. It is carried by the wind high into the sky, where it cools and condenses into clouds. The clouds drift over the land, heavy with moisture. They release it as rain, drop by drop, hour after hour, day after day. The rain falls on the mountains, on the forests, on the fields, on the roofs of the village. It runs down the slopes, gathering speed, carving new channels, washing away the loose soil. It fills the streams, then the rivers, then the sea. And from the sea it rises again to begin the cycle once more. The peasants are part of this cycle. They do not control it. They do not claim it. They only participate. They are like the rice, like the bamboo, like the mud. They are born from the water, fed by the water, and return to the water when they die. It is a humbling thought, but not a sad one. There's a certain peace in being part of something so vast, so old, so enduring. In the morning, when the light begins to creep over the hills, the village will stir. May will rise first, lighting the fire, putting the pot on to boil. Lee will follow, stretching his stiff limbs, pulling on his wet boots. The children will wake later, rubbing their eyes, listening for the sound of the rain. If it is still falling, they will know it is another day inside, another day of games and stories and quiet chores. If it has stopped, they will rush outside, eager to feel the sun on their faces, to see the world washed clean. But for now, it is still night. The rain is falling. The village is sleeping. And we, too, can let our eyes grow heavy, let our thoughts slow, let ourselves be carried by the rhythm of the water. We do not need to think about the work of the morning. We do not need to plan or prepare. We only need to listen, to breathe, to be present in this quiet moment. There is a story told in the village about the very first rain. It is not written down. It is passed from grandparent to grandchild, whispered in the dark of a rainy night. It says that long ago, before the terraces were built, before the bamboo was planted, before the rice was even a seed in the ground, the world was dry. The earth was cracked and barren. The people were hungry and thirsty. And then one day, a bird appeared. It was a small bird, plain and brown, with nothing special about it except for the song it sang. The song was sad and sweet, a lament for the dry world. The people listened, and their hearts ached. And as the bird sang, a single tear fell from its eye. The tear struck the ground, and a spring burst forth. The spring grew into a stream, the stream into a river. And then the rain came, not as a punishment, not as a test, but as a gift, a response to the world's longing. The people did not take the rain for granted. They honored it. They built their lives around it. And the bird, they say, still sings on rainy nights, its song mingling with the sound of the falling water. If you listen very carefully, you can hear it. But perhaps you have already heard it, somewhere in the back of your mind, as you lie here in the dark. Perhaps it is the sound that has been with you all along, the sound that calls you to rest, to dream, to let go. The rain is falling. The fields are full. The village is safe. And the peasants of ancient China, long gone from this world, have left behind a legacy not of monuments or armies, but of patience, care, and a deep, quiet love for the land and the water that sustain it. They knew that survival was not about fighting. It was about listening. It was about bending like the bamboo and rising again after the storm. So let us bend. Let us rise. Let us rest. The night is long, but the rain is gentle. And there is nothing more we need to do tonight except drift. But the bird's song is not the only sound that lingers in the night. There is also the sound of the bamboo grove, creaking gently in the breeze. Its long stems rubbing together like the slow conversation of old friends. The bamboo is a patient plant. It grows fast, yes, but it also knows how to wait. In the rainy season, it drinks deeply, its roots spreading through the wet soil, anchoring themselves against the mudslides that sometimes come. The peasants have learned to plant bamboo on the steep slopes, not for food, not for shade, but as a living wall, a net of roots that holds the earth in place. It is a quiet kind of engineering, one that does not require blueprints or calculations. It requires only observation, a willingness to learn from the plants themselves. Think of a farmer named Chen. He is older than Li, older than most men in the village. His back is curved like a sickle. His hands are knotted like the roots of an old tree. He does not move quickly. He does not need to. He has spent his whole life in these hills, and he knows every turn of the path, every bend of the stream, every grove of bamboo that he planted with his own father when he was a boy. Tonight, he is sitting on a low stool by his door, smoking a long pipe, watching the rain fall into the courtyard. The smoke curls up and disappears into the darkness. He is not thinking about anything in particular. His mind is as quiet as the night. He remembers a story his father told him about a year when the rain did not come. It was not a drought, exactly. It was more like the rain had forgotten the village. The clouds would gather over the mountains, but they would always pass by, dropping their water somewhere else. The river shrank. The rice wilted. The people prayed and made offerings, but the sky remained dry. It was a hard year, but not the hardest. His father had said that the old ones remembered worse. They remembered years when the rain never stopped, when the river rose and swallowed the fields, when whole villages had to move to higher ground. But the village survived. It always survived because the people knew how to adapt. They built dikes. They dug drainage channels. They stored grain in hidden pits, sealed with clay and ash, safe from water and rats. Chen had seen those pits as a child, had helped his father open one during a lean winter. The grain inside was dry and good, as fresh as the day it was stored. The knowledge of how to build those pits was older than any living person. It was passed down in whispers, in gestures, in the way a father showed his son how to tamp the clay just so. And that is the heart of survival, is it not? Not the grand invention, not the sudden breakthrough, but the slow accumulation of small truths, each one tested by time and weather. The peasants of ancient China were not heroes in any epic sense. They were not warriors or sages. They were people who woke up every day and did the same things they had done the day before, with the same care, the same patience. They mended their roofs before the rains came. They wove their baskets from bamboo strips soaked in water to make them flexible. They sharpened their hoes on stones worn smooth by generations of hands. They planted their rice in straight rows, using a stick to poke a hole, dropping in a seed, covering it with mud. It was tedious work, but it was also meditative. The mind could wander while the hands worked. The hands knew what to do. You might imagine May, the young woman from earlier, as she works in the field the next morning. The rain has paused, but the sky is still gray. The mud is thick and soft beneath her bare feet. She has a basket of seedlings tied to her waist, and she is bending over, poking holes with her fingers, placing each tiny plant into the earth. She does not think about the future. She does not think about the past. She thinks only about the next hole, the next seedling, the next step forward. Her mother is working a few paces away, and her younger brother is carrying more seedlings from the nursery bed at the edge of the field. No one speaks. There is only the sound of splashing mud and the occasional call of a water bird. It is a peaceful rhythm, a dance that has been performed for thousands of years. And then, without warning, the rain returns. It starts as a few heavy drops, each one making a distinct plop in the water standing on the field. Then it becomes a steady shower, then a downpour. May does not stop. She pulls her wide hat lower over her face and keeps working. The rain runs down her neck, down her back, cold but not unpleasant. It is just water. It is the same water that will feed the rice, that will fill the river, that will carry her back to the earth when her time comes. She accepts it. She does not fight it. But not all tasks can be done in the rain. There are times when the weather forces the peasants to stay inside, to tend to the smaller, quieter chores. This is where the true art of survival lies, in the ability to use every moment wisely. When the rain is too heavy for the fields, the women gather under the eaves of the largest house, their bamboo hats dripping, their hands busy with sewing or mending. They repair the tears in their clothes, the holes in their baskets. They talk in low voices, sharing stories and gossip. The men, if they are not out checking the channels or reinforcing the dikes, might sit in the barn, carving new handles for their tools or weaving mats from reeds. The children play in the mud, making little rivers and dams, learning the same lessons their parents learned, the same lessons their grandparents learned. There is a particular kind of light on a rainy afternoon in the village. It is a dim, gray light, soft as wool, that seems to absorb all sound. The world feels smaller, closer. The houses huddle together, and the smoke from the cooking fires rises straight up into the still air, then spreads out into a low haze. You can smell the wet earth, the wood smoke, the cooking rice. You can hear the crackle of the fire, the drip of water from the eaves, the occasional bark of a dog. It is a world that asks nothing of you except to be present. And so the villagers are present. They do not hurry. They do not worry. They simply are. Let us pause here in this gray light and consider the tools they used. The hoe, for example. It is a simple thing, a blade of iron or bronze or even sharpened stone lashed to a wooden handle. But the handle is not straight. It is curved, shaped to fit the hand, to make the swing of the arm more efficient. The curve is subtle, almost invisible unless you look closely. It came from years of trial and error, from the hands of men who noticed that a straight handle caused the wrist to ache, while a curved handle allowed the force to travel smoothly from the shoulder to the blade. They did not have a name for this principle. They did not write it down. They simply felt it in their bones. And the plow. The ancient Chinese plow was not the heavy iron plow of later European farms. It was a light wooden affair, often pulled by a water buffalo or by a man if the buffalo was not available. It did not turn the soil deeply. It only scratched the surface, making a shallow furrow into which the seeds could be dropped. This was intentional. The soil was soft and wet, and deep plowing would only bring up the infertile subsoil. The peasants knew this. They knew that the best soil was the topsoil, the dark, rich layer that had been built up by centuries of plant matter and rain. They treated it gently. They did not abuse it. And the rake, and the shovel, and the sickle. Each tool was designed for a specific task, and each task was performed at a specific time of year. There was a season for planting, a season for weeding, a season for harvesting, a season for resting. The calendar was not written on paper. It was written in the sky, in the behavior of birds, in the blooming of flowers, in the feel of the wind. When the swallows returned, it was time to prepare the fields. When the lotus bloomed, it was time to watch for floods. When the geese flew south, it was time to harvest. The peasants did not need a clock or a calendar. They had the world. And yet, for all their wisdom, they were still vulnerable. A single storm could wash away a season's work. A single disease could wipe out a family's livestock. A single bad year could bring hunger. But they did not live in fear. They lived in acceptance. They prepared as best they could, and then they trusted the rain, the soil, the ancestors, the gods. They made offerings at the small shrines at the edge of the fields, burning incense and paper money, bowing their heads. They did not ask for special favors. They only asked for balance, for the cycle to continue, for the rain to be gentle and the sun to be kind. There is a shrine in the village dedicated to the Dragon King, the god of rain. It is a small structure, no bigger than a child's playhouse, with a roof of gray tiles and a stone altar inside. Every spring, the villagers bring offerings of fruit and rice cakes. They light candles and pray. They ask the Dragon King to send the rain at the right time, not too early, not too late, not too much, not too little. Sometimes, if the rain is late, they will parade through the fields with a paper dragon, beating drums and shouting, trying to wake the sleeping god. It is a noisy affair, full of laughter and hope. And when the rain finally comes, they thank the Dragon King and they go back to work. But the Dragon King is not the only deity. There are gods of the hearth, gods of the well, gods of the rice field, gods of the mountain. The world is full of spirits, some friendly, some not. The peasants treat them all with respect. They leave a bit of food for the spirits of the ancestors. They avoid cutting down trees that are known to house spirits. They do not whistle at night for fear of attracting wandering ghosts. It is a world of invisible presences, a world where the boundary between the living and the dead is thin, especially in the rain. Let us return now to the night, to the sleeping village. The rain has become a fine mist, barely visible in the darkness. The water on the ground reflects the faint light from the stars. The river is full, gurgling softly as it carries the runoff down to the sea. The bamboo grove is still. The bird has stopped singing, or perhaps it has never stopped, but its song is now indistinguishable from the sound of the mist. The villagers are deep in their sleep. They have dreamed and forgotten their dreams. They have turned and sighed and pulled the covers up. They are resting, truly resting, because tomorrow will bring more work, more rain, more mud. But that is tomorrow. Tonight there is only this, the slow breath of sleep, the gentle fall of water, the quiet earth turning beneath them. And so we too can let go. We can let the story dissolve into the night, into the sound of rain that has been falling for millennia, into the memory of peasants who lived close to the land, who knew the names of the clouds and the taste of the soil. They are gone now, but their patience remains, woven into the fabric of the world. We can rest in that patience. We can rest in the knowledge that the rain will come, and the rain will go, and the earth will continue to hold us. There's nothing more we need to do tonight. The fire is dying. The house is warm. The rain is falling. And all is well. Good night, and sleep deeply. Let us stay here a little longer in the quiet of that sleeping village, and let the mist wrap around us like a soft blanket. The rain has become a whisper now, a faint rustle against the leaves, against the roofs, against the hard-packed earth of the paths. The world is damp and cool, and the smell of wet clay rises from the fields, mingling with the faint sweetness of rice straw. If you close your eyes, you can almost feel the presence of the ancestors, standing in the shadows, watching over the sleepers. They are patient, these ancestors. They have been watching for 1,000 years, and they will watch for 1,000 more. They do not rush. They do not worry. They simply wait. And in the houses, the sleepers stir. An old man turns in his sleep, muttering something about the height of the water in the irrigation ditch. A child cries out briefly, then settles back into the rhythm of breath. A dog shifts by the hearth, its tail thumping once against the packed earth floor. The fire has burned down to embers, glowing like the eyes of a sleepy dragon. No one gets up to add more wood. There is no need. The warmth will last until dawn, and the day will bring its own fire, its own light. In one of the houses, a woman lies awake, listening. She is old, her face lined with years of sun and wind and rain. She has seen many monsoons, many seasons of planting and harvest, many floods and many droughts. She knows that the rain tonight is gentle, that the fields will be soft and ready for the morning. She knows that her son will go out at first light to check the dikes, that her daughter-in-law will begin the cooking fire, that the children will play in the puddles. She knows all this without thinking, because it is the same pattern that has been unfolding since before she was born. She rests in that pattern. She lets it carry her. Her hands, resting on the thin blanket, are gnarled and calloused. They have held hoes and sickles, have pulled weeds and harvested rice, have washed clothes in the stream and held babies to her breast. They have done every task that the village required, and they have done it without complaint. Now they lie still, palms open, as if receiving a blessing from the night. And perhaps they are. Perhaps the night itself is a blessing, a rest from all the labor, a pause in the endless cycle of growth and decay. The rain continues. It is not a storm, but a steady, patient drizzle, the kind that soaks into everything, that makes the world feel saturated and heavy. The fields are shining with moisture, each blade of rice grass holding a tiny bead of water, each bead reflecting a fragment of the dim starlight. The frogs have begun to sing again, a low, rhythmic chorus that sounds like the very voice of the earth itself. They are calling for more rain, or perhaps they are simply celebrating what has already come. The villagers do not know, and they do not care. The frogs are just part of the night, part of the rain, part of the endless turning of the seasons. There is a wooden bucket by the well, half full of water, that was drawn earlier in the evening. A few drops of rain fall into it, making a soft, musical sound, like a distant bell. The sound is so gentle, so unassuming, that it might be mistaken for silence itself. But if you listen closely, you can hear it. A tiny splash, a brief resonance, then nothing. Then another drop, another splash. It is the heartbeat of the night, steady and sure. It is the pulse of the land itself. And so the hours pass. The mist thickens slightly, then thins. The frogs pause, then resume. The embers fade from orange to gray. The old woman closes her eyes at last, and her breath deepens into sleep. The village settles into the deepest part of the night, the time when even the ghosts are still. There's no sound now but the rain, falling on the fields, falling on the roofs, falling on the sleeping earth. Let us imagine that we are there, standing at the edge of the village, our feet sinking slightly into the soft ground. The air is cool and damp on our skin. The darkness is complete, but it is not frightening. It is a friendly darkness, a darkness that holds us like a parent holding a child. The rain touches our face, our hands, and we do not brush it away. We let it be. We let it soak into us, just as it soaks into the fields, just as it has soaked into the lives of generations of peasants who lived and worked and slept under this same sky. There is no parting. There is no ending. The rain will continue to fall, and the earth will continue to drink, and the villagers will continue to wake and sleep and wake again. The cycle is eternal, and we are part of it, even in this moment, even in the comfort of our own beds, far from the muddy fields of ancient China. The rain that falls there is the same rain that falls everywhere. The patience of the peasants is the same patience that lives in our own hearts when we allow ourselves to slow down, to listen, to rest. And so we let the story fade, not into nothing, but into the quiet that holds all stories. We let the sound of rain carry us gently, without effort, into the deep and peaceful darkness.